You build confidence and become resilient by doing the things you don't feel capable of doing. Hey everyone, I'm back, and today I have a really special interview with you, not with you, for you, with Makini Smith. And I'm going to introduce Makini in a minute, but I'm really excited to have this conversation with her because it's about faith and it's about resilience. Makini is well known for talking about resilience. She is the host of the podcast A Walk In My Stilettos. It's for women looking for the tools and motivation to conquer their fears, own their story, and strengthen their resiliency muscles. Her passion is to improve the quality of people's lives, including making an impact while she contributes her time spreading awareness around mindset, providing expertise on media platforms globally. She's been seen all over the place and has also been mentored by Bob Proctor. She talks about that actually in today's interview. And what I really enjoyed about Makini is this conversation about answering that question of, why do some people thrive and other people sink, right? Some sink and some swim. And we all may have had experiences being very, very challenged, but it's what we do in those moments of challenge that makes the biggest impact in our future. And so on this podcast and in my programs, I'm always advocating for, how do you want to feel? What do you want your life to look like? And stepping in and towards that version of you. Because it doesn't just come to you. You are the co-creator with the universe. You are the co-creator with what you want and desire. We cannot just cross our fingers and write things down and hope and pray that it's going to come to us without us taking action. So I hope today's conversation shows you a little bit about yourself and inspires you to maybe recognize, one, how resilient you actually are already from the actions you've taken and what you've been through. And maybe just a little mindset shift, or maybe there was something in here that was a gem for you. So I just want to recommend, if you do gain any value from this, one, thank you. You're always welcome to screen share, tag me, share it with a friend. It's always beneficial when we can come together as a community and support each other. And send me a message. You're welcome to text me at 313-710-5199. That's 313-710-5199. Let me know what you took away from today's conversation as you continue on your personal development journey. Or send me a message on Instagram at Heather Chauvin. So let's dive in. This is Makini Smith. So, Makini, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Heather. Honestly, after our conversation on my podcast, I'm like, I need to be her friend because we need to have more conversations. And there's so many things that we resonate on. So I'm just grateful that you invited me to be on your show.
So let's talk about resilience, because I'm looking at you right now. People obviously can't see you because it's audio only. Your shirt says resilient. Pillows. You have this huge sign behind you. Resilience is my superpower. And I'm sick of saying now more than ever, because I just, all these cliche terms, but resiliency is something that I've always been interested in, especially when I was in social work and learning about it and the research behind it. So I'm just going to give you the microphone and just letting everyone know kind of like how you fell in love with resilience and a little bit of your backstory.
So it's interesting. My present obsession with resilience, I'm going to say, stem from me being resilient since I was born and not owning it. And I think after I hit 40, all the experiences that I went through and, people constantly telling me that they admire my resilience, where it kind of finally sunk into my my subconscious mind, like, oh wait, no, we're resilient. We're damn resilient. And I started to own it and walk in that. And it almost became my strength. Actually, I don't want to say almost. It has become my strength. And that's where the whole resilience is my superpower came from. I mean, I was raised by a single mom. My parents split before I was a year old. And my mother did this testimony one time at her church where she explained that, her and my dad were having issues and she was considering an abortion, and something said to her, don't do it. This is going to be a special child, a gift. And she gave birth to me. And ever since I was little, she said, I, would light up the community. We lived in a community that was a lot of single moms, actually, and everyone would take care of each other's children. And how I was able to help the other moms and do other things, she was just like, wow, this little girl, she's special. But as a child growing up in government housing, you kind of didn't expect this rose to grow out of the concrete. And I don't know. I've always been, I'm going to say, quiet and introverted, and people expected, they saw this little Black girl, and I don't know if they expected a big voice or someone tall, or I don't know what they expected. But me being quiet and reserved actually drew people to me and wanting to know more about me and know my story. And over the years, from being a single mom to going through divorce to losing my sister to losing my grandmother the same year, like all of these experiences, one after another, people were drawn to me and just kept asking me my story. And the more that I shared my story, the more that I was able to connect with other people, connect with other women, and realize that, there's a part of someone's story that we can learn from. But they found strength in hearing mine and my openness and transparency and my, I'm going to say, lack of shame with going through all of the details of the crap that I've been through. So I constantly started hearing that theme of resilience, and people were like, oh my God, you're so resilient. And I've had women that have followed me for over 10 years on social media and watched my journey, and they're always in my DMs telling me they admire my resilience. And finally this year I was like, you know what? I am damn resilient. I have been through some stuff and I'm still standing. We're in the middle of a quarantine. We're on our second lockdown. And I'm like, oh, well, I actually went through isolation the year before this quarantine because of health issues and cancer scares and all these things. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm still smiling. I'm alive. I'm grateful. I'm still serving. I'm resilient.
I have so many questions. Wow, I have so many questions. The first question I have is, I don't think people, it's not even a question at this point, but I don't think people be like, I need some resiliency. I need some, some resilience. I need some confidence. I need, this. Like, you don't go to the store and buy it. You just are. Mm-hmm. You become, and you don't get to choose. Like shit happens to you, and then you choose, am I going to allow this to take over and sink, or am I going to rise? Mm-hmm. I'm always very curious, and this, I guess, is my question to you. I don't want to say why some people choose rise and some people sink, but when people are like, you're this, oh my gosh, like how, like they're so curious. I'm like, you got this inside of you too. So what is your perspective on that? When they're like, you're so inspiring, you're so this, and you're like, come on. Why? How come some people boom and others don't? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like you said, we all have resilience inside of us. It's our ability to get back up after we've been knocked down. But I think perspective-wise, some people, when they get knocked back down, they're in that frame of mind where it's like, oh my God, this is where I am, and this is it. I have to stay here. And I think part of being resilient for me, and what I've also learned from your story and the other women that I've interviewed on my podcast, is we've had something greater than us that we've been able to look towards to keep going. It kind of pulls us out of, I'm going to say, when we're sitting in the shit, where it's like, I don't need to stay here. This stinks. Like I'm going towards this over there. And I know that for me, I'm going to say in 2012, when my sister passed away, and I started receiving all these messages of how she inspired other people and what she meant to them. For me, that was legacy. It made me ask the question, how do I want to be remembered? So my anchor that keeps me going and keeps me grounded in resilience is that it's way greater than me, that I am able to serve, and it's a blessing to be able to bless others, but it's not just about me. It's about the legacy that I'm going to be able to leave behind. It's my footprint, not just with my children, but on a global scale, how I've been able to help other people to live better lives and to tap into their potential and to do greater things. So if I was sitting in my room and I was only focused on me and I was very self-centered, I think that I could easily fall pity to my circumstances and look around me and be like, okay, well, I don't have the money that I should have right now. I don't have the relationship that I thought I would have by now. I don't have, the things, the material things that I once had. But no, because my focus is not self-centered. It is, how do I say this? It's not self-centered in terms of what drives me, although it's very self-centered in terms of where my desires come from. It is about what brings me joy. And that is through service and the bigger picture, and it not just being about me, if that makes sense.
I'm like, yes, I get it. So isn't it funny when we're talking and we're like, do you get what I'm saying? And we're like, yes. And we can't communicate it. It's just like a feeling. Okay. So I want to ask you this, and I was on your podcast. We talked what's the name of your podcast? I talked about it in the intro.
Walk In My Stilettos.
Perfect. So everyone needs to go listen to your podcast. Okay. When I started my journey, it was from a place of parenting, right? I couldn't even consider my desires. That's how low I was, right? I was like, shit, I just don't want my children to feel the way I do right now. So I'm going to do everything I can to get out of here, out of this hole. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the next level and I was like, okay, there's some momentum here. And I felt that spark or desire to talk about it publicly. And then, but it was still from a place of, I wouldn't say lack, but it was fear driven. I was like, am I alone? Am I alone? Am I alone? Like, does anyone hear me? How come everybody's okay with suffering and feeling like shit and the world, being on fire and children, suffering and everyone being labeled and we're okay with this? Like, why? And then I got to a point where people were listening and I'm like, I got to show up for the community, right? Like I can't back down to play small. Mm-hmm. I know I'm like, do I make sense? But I know I do. So here's my question for you, because you were talking about that something bigger. And I grew up with a religious background that I just was not into. I felt, we all take the shame, the guilt, all of that, rub it all over ourselves. And I was like, this doesn't feel good. I don't want this. So over the years, my belief system has changed around God, spirituality, something bigger. And with every experience or like resiliency or whatever it is, it shifts, the definition changes. And I'm curious your perspective on that when it comes to, I get frustrated when someone's like, I can't do that because I feel guilty. And I'm like, can you not get out of yourself and see how your lack of I can't is actually negatively influencing your children, the community, the world at large?
Yeah.
So I'm just curious about this conversation and your perspective.
So first off, survival is fear-based, and a lot of people are living in survival mode, right? I was that person once upon a time. And I spent almost 20 years in 2 toxic relationships living in survival mode, focused on serving my partner and my children. And I was nowhere within that equation. And when I left those relationships and I started to focus on self-care and my relationship with God, I realized that my life is a gift and the purpose is to do something with it here on this earth. And when my days are done and God says to me, what did you do with the gift that I gave you? I don't want to be like, oh, well, I sat in my room crying because it wasn't what I expected it to be. I want to be able to say, well, I helped this person do this, and I did this for the world, and I did this. So I think a lot of people are sitting in survival mode, in fear, usually fear of failure, fear of what someone else is going to say or think when you're not even on that person's mind 10 minutes from now, fear of all these things, not realizing that when you push through that fear, all of the rewards are on the other side. Like most people are, and I mean, our brains are programmed for safety, right? So it's our automatic response to want to stay safe. But I've found living, I don't want to say living on the edge, but living by faith and allowing things to happen and going with the flow, being in harmony. People say I kind of talk on both sides of the fence, where sometimes I talk and I say God, and sometimes I say the universe, but God created the universe. So it's like being in flow with the universe instead of fighting against things and living in struggle. And I feel like I just rambled. I'm like, what was the question?
No, because I want to ask you follow-up questions to this. So I'm going to assume that you talk about living by faith, right? Mm-hmm. So I think a lot of people are still questioning, like, what does that mean? Because mm-hmm. for a big part of my journey, I felt like, early on in my teens, I discounted religion, and then I didn't know what faith or spirituality was beyond religion. And then that's when I found self-help, and, I was like, I can make up my own shit, or like, I can, it's like, we always want to like acquire someone else's belief systems. And it's like, mm-hmm. no, it could just, it could be a female, whatever color you want, like make it your own. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mm-hmm. have to be like what they said. Right. So here's my thing. Like, I remember having my son, because we share that in common, teen mom. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh shit. I never looked and was like, this is a gift from God. Like, you are God's child. I did not do that. I was like, mm-hmm. I was in fear. And then I was like, something bigger. I got to figure this shit out. Mm-hmm. I'm assuming you still experience fear, because we all have moments of fear, but how do you live with the intention of something?
Sorry, I lost you for a second. How do you live with the intention?
Okay. How do you live like a faith-based life, or a life with your goal of a greater cause, or that you are a gift, right? And not let fear run your life. Because we still experience it. Absolutely. I was probably terrified yesterday.
Yep.
It's like, but how do I not let fear run that, and I stay on the track of knowing that I have gifts, God-given, universe-given gifts?
So I think people, or a lot of people, assume that, especially because I do mindset coaching, that I don't experience fear, or that I'm, like, especially because I talk about resilience, that fear doesn't exist to me. And that's not true. Fear exists. It is my ability to push through the fear when I get there, to get to the other side. So it's like I was saying before, how, we're programmed for safety, and we have this, I'm going to call it a terror barrier, where, there's something here that we're afraid of. Most people as soon as they get to that terror barrier, will turn back and go automatically back to what they know, back to safety. And if you are aware that on the other side of that is the reward, because everything that I've ever wanted was on the other side of what I feared. If you were able to push through that terror barrier and you reap the rewards, it's almost like you create a new habit because you realize it's a reward system. It's like, you have a pet and you give them a treat and they're like, oh my God, if I do this, then I get a treat. So after having to be resilient and going through these things and learning to push through these terror barriers and break my own glass ceilings, realizing the rewards that are on the other side, I was like, oh, okay. So when I come against something that I'm afraid of, instead of running back to safety, it's like, okay, I can tackle this. I can go through this. And when I do go through this, I'm strengthening my resilience muscle. And, when you talked before about the faith and when you had your child at 17, when it comes to faith, and I don't ever like to be referred to as religious because I don't believe in religion. I believe that religion divides. I have my own personal relationship with God. And to me, that is based on love and not division and hate. When it comes to faith, when I think about faith, it is centered around our belief, because both fear and faith are beliefs in the unknown. Right?
Ooh, can you repeat that?
Both fear and faith are beliefs in the unknown. Right? So we fear what we don't know.
Yeah.
We have a choice. And if I can choose, I am going to choose to believe that things are going to work out for the good or for better. Our brains may be programmed to say, oh my God, if I go outside, I'm going to get hit by a car. And then I'm going to all these negative things. But if you can intentionally put in the positive thoughts and believe that something can work out for the good, just as much as we believe that it can work out for the bad, it's a choice. And it's just like resilience, it is the muscle that we do have to strengthen, but it is a choice. And years ago, I think it was maybe after my sister passed in 2012, where I looked at the acronym of fear, instead of it being false evidence appearing real, I switched it to face everything and rise. So there's things that I'm terrified to do. People don't believe me when I say this often because they're like, oh, you have a podcast and you're on social media, but I am severely introverted. And the old Makini would not have ever gotten into public speaking. She would not have ever chosen to be speaking in front of hundreds or thousands of people. She would never start a podcast. I have done all of those things. I have been terrified to do them, but I have done them. I've pushed through that terror barrier. I've broken my own glass ceilings. And instead of being afraid, I pushed through that fear. And the rewards on the other side have been endless. Mm-hmm. Not only the rewards from my personal development, but the impact that I've been able to make by even sharing that with other women who are introverted or other women who, have been through the same experiences. And something as simple as using those examples, like I volunteer a lot of time with teen moms, and I go into those facilities that house them and school them, because when I was 17, I spent my last semester going to a school like that for pregnant young girls. But going in there and sharing the fact that, yes, I was in your shoes once upon a time. I was terrified. I was 17. I had no idea what the rest of my life was going to mean. And I was bringing this small human into the world and terrified of the responsibility. And look now, I'm a 4-time published author with a 5-star rated podcast. And I'm speaking on platforms. I'm making an impact, letting them know what is possible when you push through the fear.
I love this. And just that's evidence that the more you go after your desire, like what's inside of you, and you're like, what if I wrote a book? What if I started a podcast? What if I spoke? Like whatever your thing is, it doesn't have to be any of that, but whatever's inside of you that's trying to get your, oh, now they're making more noise behind me. Whatever you're is trying to get your attention, it's not selfish to go after those things.
No, it's not.
You're in that room helping pretty much your older or your younger self go,
yeah.
You got this. You got this. You can do this. Look at it. Hope and possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of people look at, their thoughts about, especially, I'm going to say especially moms, because I hear this a lot, where they feel selfish doing things for themselves. And I went through that, where I was so focused on serving my partner and serving my children that I used to feel guilty for self-care and doing things for me. And I would feel guilty. I wouldn't enjoy going to get my nails done because I'd be sitting there for an hour saying, oh my God, I should be at home cooking dinner, or I should be doing this, or what have you. And I have learned now that the better that I feel about myself and the more that I'm able to do for myself, that's not selfish. It is self-care, because I have to take care of me, because in order for me to carry the world on my shoulders, I need to be okay. Because if I feel like shit, I don't have the strength or the mental capacity to do anything for anyone. So now it is like, no, it's a priority for self-care. I need self-care every single day and all day on Sunday. Like, I have set it into my calendar. Do not bother me. My phone is on do not disturb. I am either reading a book or, meditating or getting my nails done or doing things that make me feel good. Because when we feel good, we're on a higher vibration. And when we're on a higher vibration, we are able to manifest everything, but we are also in a place where we feel the energy to serve, and we feel the energy to do the things that come to us. And we don't feel like, oh my God, I can't do this because we have put ourselves on the higher vibration. When I talk about vibration, like, our feelings are just titles for the vibration that we're on. So if I am feeling happy, I'm on a high vibration. If I am feeling angry, I'm on a low vibration. And when you're in that low place, because your body is feeling all of those things physically, it hurts. I feel tense. I can't breathe. I'm all of these things. But when you're on a high vibration and you're feeling happy, that energy that you have, like even right now, I'm vibrating on a high vibration because we're talking about something I'm excited about, but it gives me energy. And that energy that is fuel that I can use to do the things that I want to do, and to have the energy to play with my kids and do things with the dog and serve women that I'm connected to.
And to also feel energized and excited when you're in lockdown. Like, that's, what I've been telling people. I'm like, it's okay to be exhausted. Like, it's not a bad thing if you're like, oh, I'm angry. Crap, I screwed up the process. It's like, that's fine, but do something with it. Try not to stay there too long. Now, I want to go back. I really want to ask you about like what finally made you leave the relationships, because I see so many women, and I'm sure there's some listening to this who know they should go, but won't, and they stay. And when I say no, I don't, people are like, tell me what to do. And it's like, no one can tell you what to do, because then you're actually doing it for someone else. That's codependency, which is probably why you're still in the relationship. But ultimately it's your choice, right? But so I want to ask you that, but I also wanted to just circle back so everyone can bring awareness to this. You mentioned at the beginning, you're like, I was doing those things, whether it was your nails, like whatever the self-care is for you. It could be nails, you could be the physical things. It can also be boundaries, all of that. You said you were doing it anyways, even though you still felt guilty, like when you were starting to do those things, which to me is a representation of you breaking your terror. You call it terror barrier. I call it like entering the brave zone, right? The messy middle. You're like, fuck, this is so uncomfortable. But that, I just want to like amplify that for people, because they're like, what do I do? And it's like, stop. Like, you're playing double dutch, and you're not willing to jump in and get whacked in the face with the, what is that thing? Skipping rope.
The skipping rope. Yep.
So yeah, like that's an example of breaking your barrier.
Yeah. And I mean, change is always uncomfortable at first, and it's very messy in the middle because we don't know what the heck we're doing. And then it's beautiful in the end. And I think most people are afraid of change because of the fear of the unknown. So bringing it back to choosing fear or faith, right? When you talked about me leaving those relationships, I think there's a huge gap between what we know and what we actually do. And sometimes we know that we're in a relationship that's not healthy for us, but we stay, and sometimes we'll justify it. Oh, it's better for the kids, or, I don't know. Some women may be thinking they can't get a better relationship, or they don't know what to do. But again,
or I can't afford it. What am I going to do?
They can't afford it.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's all in fear of the unknown. And when I went through my divorce, I wrote an article for CBC where it was almost like, I think they titled it "Jumping with No Parachute" or something. I don't know. I don't recommend this, but I jumped without a plan, but I made the decision. And I think for everyone who's in any situation, like you said, no one can tell you what to do. It is completely up to you. And most people that I know that have left toxic relationships, it's almost like enough has to be enough for you. Like when someone says, well, when is enough enough? Well, you have to get to that point where you're like, okay, but seriously now, I've had enough. And when I made that decision, I was a stay-at-home mom for 5 years. And I didn't have steady income. I got a part-time job doing collections, and I had no idea what I was going to do, but I made the decision. I was like, this is it. I'm done. Enough is enough. I deserve better. I can't do this anymore. And when I made that decision, my faith allowed me to take certain actions, but it also attracted everything that I needed so that I didn't drown. And I'm not saying it was easy. It was freaking hard because when I first decided to leave, I was jumping straight into entrepreneurship full time because I was coming from being a stay-at-home mom for 4.5 years. And I was like, you know what? How am I going to be able to provide for my children and basically make a living and kind of I wanted to give them the same lifestyle that they had. Mind you, my ex-husband made multiple six figures and I was a stay-at-home mom. So I was like, how am I going to do that? So when I jumped into real estate, I had no idea what I was doing. This little quiet introverted girl going out and now selling properties and basically having to sell who I am in order to get people to trust me to make the biggest financial decision they'll probably ever make. That was completely out of my comfort zone. And I didn't make any money for 8 months. And when I tell you, it was like the universe gave me what I needed. My friends showed up for me, even when I was afraid to be open and vulnerable. They were buying me groceries. Like a couple times they paid my mortgage. Like things happened to make sure that everything fell into place. And then when that 8th month hit, it was like, God said, okay, you've suffered enough. You've earned your due. And the taps opened up and I did more real estate in the last 4 months of that year than the average realtor does in 12 months. So it was like, I had the faith that things would work out. And there was many times where I was like, okay, what am I really doing? Everyone is telling me I'm crazy. I should get a job. I've got 3 kids. I've got a mortgage. I've got a car payment. I've got a dog. What are you doing? Yeah. But I had the belief that things would work out, and they did.
It's those damn dogs. They're the ones that are always screwing. I love people when they're like, I have children and a dog. And I'm like, you're my people. You like dogs. Babies. You like dogs. You fur babies. It's like, you can tell when people, I'm like, yes, you're my people. You love dogs. These children and these dogs. This dog. Partner, who cares? The dog. The dog.
Yeah.
So much goodness in there. It just brings me back to those moments, like faith. I didn't even know what that was. Like when I hear it now, have faith, have faith. Again, it was a trigger word for me. It was such a trigger word for me. I used to have people early on, mentors, you can say you paid for them or didn't pay for them, right? But people that are like, that believed in you. And oftentimes, and I'm sure you experience this as well, when you're working with somebody or you have someone in your life that is taking that leap without the parachute, or they have the parachute, but they're really nervous, holding that belief for someone when they don't believe in themselves, priceless. And I remember one of my first mentors, like believed in me, and I thought I was crazy, and I was just riddled in fear and self-doubt in the business world, not other areas of my life. That's a whole other story. But in the business world, she's like, yeah, you got this. You can totally do this. I love your idea, blah, blah, blah. And then it's just like, come on, come on, come on, come on. And I remember crying on the phone and just being like, thank you for believing in me. And she's like, all right, like, why wouldn't I? Like, this is brilliant. And, or you're fine, you got this. But here's where the difference is. I tell people co-creating, right? Co-creating your life with the universe, with something bigger than you, with other people, and codependency.
Right.
Because you're like, you're doing your thing. And these people are like, look at, she's going for her dream. She's doing it. She's making magic happen. It's not showing, it's not coming back to her yet, because it's like, you need to build the momentum and fill the cup before you have any evidence of it. But your friends are providing for you. The community is showing up, or like that book drops off, you know, something shows up. Like, I'm like, okay, it's 11:11. All right. I'm taking that as a sign. Like anything, you're grabbing onto anything. You're like, I found $1 on the street. Great. I'm gonna put that in my piggy bank. And the difference between co-creating, because I tell people, I'm like, listen, I will hold the belief for you. I can quote unquote be inspiring, but I cannot have the resilience for you. I cannot have the fight for you. You got to fucking show up and do the work, and you have to break your terror barrier.
Terror barrier. Yeah.
And you, like, nobody else can do that for you. You might feel a little good, but you watch the codependency versus co-creation. So curious your perspective.
Wow. So okay. So it's like, I want to go into the story. I'm like, is this directly on the point of what you're saying? But, back in 2000, so I was like, it was computing in my head. Back in 2013, after my sister passed away, I had a complete stranger reach out to me from the internet. And he said that he loved what I was posting on Twitter, how it was so motivational. And he had an opportunity for me to meet Bob Proctor. So I had watched the documentary, The Secret, back in 2009 when I was going through my divorce. A friend forced me to watch it, and I was like, but I wasn't ready for it. But, you know, I did the vision boards and I did a couple of things, but I wasn't ready to fully take it on. So this guy calls and I was like, buddy, I'm busy. I'm in the middle of doing a real estate deal right now. Like, can you just send me an email? I thought it was, you know, spam or, you know, whatever. And he sends the email and there's a picture of him standing next to Bob Proctor with an invitation to come to a seminar in Richmond Hill, Toronto. And I was like, okay, that's like 25 minutes from where I live. It's not far, but I was just looking at Bob's courses. And back then, I think it was like $12,000 for a weekend course. And I was like, he's inviting me for free? There has to be something wrong here. Then I decided, okay, instead of being a skeptic, faith, believe. And I went that day. Everything that could have went wrong, from whoever was supposed to help with the kids, didn't show up. I ran out of gas. I got lost, everything, you name it. Anyway, I show up at this event.
I don't want to interrupt, but why do you think things like that happen? Everything goes wrong when the sign is there.
It's about you building that resilience. Do you really want it? Are you able to push through? Because if everything was easy, then everyone would have everything, right? It's about being able to work for it. I think things happen and people assume, because things didn't go super smooth, that it wasn't meant to happen, but that's not true. You're building strength there. You're being sharpened. It's like taking sandpaper and rubbing it against a surface. It's smoothing you out. You're being formed. So I attended, and when I got to the hotel conference room, Bob Proctor was standing at the door. Mind you, I was late, so I was already terrified. I'm introverted. Anxiety is kicking in, and I attend. I get to the door. Bob Proctor's at the door greeting everyone as they come in. The stranger that invited me off of Twitter pops up and is like, hey, thanks for coming. And I look in this room, and there was no more than 30 people in the room. And I thought, oh crap, everyone was already having these individual conversations. And for an introvert like me, the anxiety was like, so I go and I sit at this empty table. An older lady comes over and a younger lady. And the older lady starts asking me questions about my life. I start telling her about being a single mom and getting into real estate full time and how well I'm doing at Remax and all these amazing things. And she's like, wow, your story is so inspiring. You need to tell my husband. And I'm like, who's your husband? And she turns around, she's like, Bob, and calls Bob Proctor over. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me. Okay. So she calls him over.
I'm like on the edge of my seat.
She called him over, introduces us, and she goes up to the front of the room to introduce him for him to start speaking. And she's telling everyone, before I introduce my husband, I was just talking to this young lady. You guys need to meet her. Again, I thought like I wanted the floor to part like the Red Sea, because I was like, no, don't. Like introverts, we hate the spotlight. So she tells the room about me, and then Bob ends up going up and doing his thing. And my mind is completely blown as he's talking about the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And by the end of the seminar, I ended up staying connected with his wife, Linda. We exchanged phone numbers. She's like, yeah, let's go for coffee sometime. I ended up talking to Bob, and I stayed connected with them. And I had the blessing of being hands-on mentored by Bob, his wife, Linda, and his daughter, Colleen. And I've been in their home. His wife, Linda, wrote the foreword for my first book. And then I went through, so I struggle with fibromyalgia. It's an autoimmune disorder. And I went through having severe flare-ups where I was like in bed, not well, for 6 out of 7 days a week. And most people didn't know this because in real estate, I was still showing up online and doing things. And I'm trying to like sum up the story. So back, I was sick for over a year, and Bob's wife, Linda, kept checking on me to see how I was doing. And I was like, I'm not okay. And I get this phone call one day that Bob was looking for more consultants for the business. And one of his salespeople was on the phone with me trying to convince me to become a consultant. And I was like, I have been sick. I have barely been working. I'm a single mom. I'm not feeling well. I don't have any money. Like, I'm giving him my sob story. And he says, hold on 1 second. I'm going to call you back in 5 minutes. He calls me back in 5 minutes and he says, I just talked to Bob. And mind you, this guy could have been lying. I have no idea, but this got me. He says, I just talked to Bob and he believes that you can do this. He has so much faith in you. And he went through like a list of qualities that he said, Bob said that I have. And in that moment where I was at my lowest, he used Bob's belief in me to get me to say yes and make the decision to become a consultant. And I completely, like my life is completely different from what it was when I made that decision in 2017. But in that moment, I was down in the shit, feeling like crap, feeling like I can't do anything. I can't serve anybody. I can't even serve myself. I can't even serve my children. Yeah. And I borrowed that belief that Bob had in me. And that allowed me to come out of the crap and to put the effort and belief that I was able to do it. Because I'm like, oh my God, if he believes I can do it, then he must see something in me that I don't see right now. I didn't see it in that moment. And I did the course. I started doing the coaching. And I cry when I'm on the one-on-one calls with my clients, because when they tell me the difference in their life that I'm making, and I remember where I was at my lowest when I started this. And it's like, oh my God, I'm making a difference. I'm doing something. I'm doing something good, and it's meaningful, and it feels great to me to see the results in other people's lives and to see what they're doing and to see them come out of that crap place. So when you talk about borrowing or, that belief from somewhere else, like that's my long story.
Oh my gosh. I'm like, I just went on an emotional roller coaster. So thank you for that experience. Who needs, I was going to say Millennium Force. What's it called? Cedar Point. We don't need to go on any roller coaster ride. I just had one inside of my mind listening to your story. So thank you for that experience and adventure. I can so resonate with that. And also it brings, like, I think I'm getting emotional, one, because I didn't have many people like that in my life. There was one teacher that did something for me. But you become what you needed. And I have many experiences in my adult life where I've like taken stands for other people like that, and watched them, and then discount my part in it, or discount my, like, oh, no big deal, no big deal, no big deal. But that resiliency, like, as you're telling the story, not only do I think it's magical, to me, one is leadership, right? Like, that is an authentic leader. Somebody who is like, I see potential in you, and I know you're going to give me all your bullshit and excuses, but if you're willing to, just like give me a little smack across the face and be like, stop it. I don't want to hear your excuses. I want to hear, like, are you willing to do the work? Like, are you willing to show up? For someone to see the potential and you're like, you might be lying. Are you talking to me? Was it somebody behind me? Okay, I'll do it. And just be open to the faith process of really showing up and doing that. And then you now get to do that for other people. The magic of understanding the impact that you make when you're like, I see potential in you. And this is where, this is why I left my corporate job, because I was doing that too much. And I'm like, I can't do that within a broken system. That is not, but I can still be me and lead. And I think we all lead. One of the biggest books that had the biggest impact when I was starting was by Robin Sharma, The Leader Who Had No Title. And it was just a fable about this guy who ran a bookstore and was making a huge impact, and he wasn't that quote unquote important, right? He wasn't a big CEO. And I just like, you can make an impact. And this, I think, is why I'm so passionate about parenting. So I'm like, everyone complains about people's personalities and narcissism and, like, how shitty they are at relationships, but nobody is looking at the humongous reason why, which is how they were raised.
Right.
And there's so many complexities of that. But my point is, the leader who had no title, or the woman who doesn't think she has that big of an impact, who's raising humans. And even if you're not raising humans, there's people around you that are looking at you. Yeah. And you have the impact to literally change somebody's life, because you and I would not be having this conversation if that woman, because it wasn't even her husband, she's like, it's always women who are like fucking rocks behind the man who's like, look at me, look at me, look at me. And she's like, I'm going to bring you to my husband because he holds the power.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to slowly bring all these women to him so that he can make an impact. And then, ladies, please open your fucking mouth, because I'm sick of these white men being the ones teaching this goddamn message.
It's funny you say that.
She has her strategy. She has her strategy.
She definitely does. She so does. And it was actually his daughter, Colleen, that got me into public speaking, because, we'd be at meetings and Linda would, say my name and I would sink into my chair. And there was a couple times where I'd be like, oh shit. And Colleen would be like, I can hear you. Like, the whole room just heard you say that. And she sat me down one day and she held me by my shoulders and she said, Makini, what is it that you're afraid of with public speaking? She says, you have so much to share. You were focusing on the energy out there towards you. You need to be focusing on your energy and what you have to share and the gifts that you have out to them. And that's what helped me break through my fear of public speaking, because she, again, instilled in me and gave me the confidence and the push that I had a message to share, that I was able to inspire others. And I needed to focus that energy out into being of service and changing lives.
That's why I liked podcasting, because I pretended I was talking to myself, and I still do. And then you know, I get messages from people being like, oh, you know, you really helped me. And I'm like, no, I didn't. I'm just talking to myself. Like, I have to mentally tell myself that. And then when I'm in a room with all those people, I feel naked and afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, they know, they've been listening. But it's like, yeah, Heather, they've been listening whether they're looking at you or not. So it's the fear of speaking our truth, like the fear of being found out, the vulnerability and all the crap we tell ourselves. And
the imposter syndrome.
Oh, it's so fun. But it's a good journey. Like, I wouldn't have it any other way.
I agree with you. And the journey has definitely developed me into the open-minded person that I am. You know, I think that if I automatically went from where I was before without any struggle or any of those stories and straight into this great place, making money and all those things, it's like people who win the lottery. You know, they go from being completely broke to having all this money. And because they were never taught the in-between of how to manage all of that, they lose it. They do the dumbest stuff with it. And it's like, how do you lose all of that money within such a short period of time? Well, because they never developed the skills in order to manage it. So everything that I've been through has helped develop me and my mindset and my habits to be the person that I am, that is able to manage everything that I have now. You know, if we can't manage $10, how are we going to be able to manage 100? If we can't manage $100, how are we going to manage 1,000? So there's little principles in there that not only does it make me who I am, but it also helps me to evaluate and to interact with other people and not come from a place of judgment, but more of understanding because of where I've been and what I've learned along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're in it, you're like, this is not fun. Mm-hmm. And I've been saying a lot lately, because I had to do this for myself, because we live in such a culture of hardness, and especially women, like burnout is a huge problem. Obviously, you know, everyone's trying to do it all and all of that, you know, just so much shit. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, I don't want my life to be hard anymore. Like, I'm done with the suffering. So I've reframed it to, instead of I can do hard things, or it needs to be hard, or this is hard, this is uncomfortable. Because essentially, like, I have so much discomfort working out. Like, I resist it so much, but I know it's giving me the biggest growth opportunity. So I just keep pounding at it. And I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to work out for an hour. Today's 5 minutes. Tomorrow, 6 minutes. Like, I'm like, just break the barrier. Yeah. Right. But I'm like, Heather, it's actually not difficult to walk into your garage and pick up these 10-pound weights and do quick squats with them. It's emotionally uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so when I shift it that way, I'm like, oh, I'm used to getting emotionally uncomfortable. We've all done extremely uncomfortable things. We've felt deep, 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 deep pain. Oh, if that's all I need to do, okay, I know I'm not going to die. It's just temporary discomfort. But when I'm filtering it through the lens of this needs to be hard, then that workout becomes that hour. And then if I don't do the whole hour, I'm a failure because it wasn't hard enough, or I didn't do as many reps. And that was the biggest game changer for my brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Even when you said, you know, that the workout, you know, you're supposed to work out for an hour and you're only able to work out for 6 minutes. I think people assume that if they want a certain result, that they aim for drastic changes, but our brains are not programmed that way. If you implement small changes, the compound interest is going to be a lot greater than you trying to make this drastic change and then your brain resisting and you going all the way back to where you were before. So I think it's great that you've been able to reframe that perspective and at least put in those, you know, few minutes so that you can push yourself. Something as simple as, I don't know, let's say social media. You know, someone is new to being an entrepreneur and they want to use social media for their business. And they're like, okay, oh my God, I'm going to post like 4 times a day. Well, you went from posting once every 3 months there's no way you're going to be able to be consistent at posting 4 times a day. So if you say to yourself, whether it be once a day or 3 times a week or whatever, but you give yourself something small, and then as soon as you're able, it becomes automatic, then you can increase that so that you can eventually get to the 4 times a day if that's your goal. But trying to do those drastic things, not only is it not realistic, but that's not how the brain actually works.
Yeah. And that's the annoying part, because then, you're seeking the quote unquote perfect strategy, or you download somebody's free opt-in on how to engage, on Instagram. And it's like, well, this is what I do. And it's like, yeah, you're also been at this for 10 years and you have a team behind you and you have these perfect photos and blah, blah, blah. Like, I really gain value from people who, I look at the leader. I don't look how beautiful their website is. Or how pretty their photos are. And then as you grow, you can evolve and upgrade and do whatever. But I really look at the person and their energy and how they show up. Not like, is this perfectly set on your sales page? Or it's because I lose my mind over that shit. And I was like, listen, it might be exactly what you need, but it might not be. Like, let's have a conversation, DM me, let's do whatever. So I could talk to you forever. It's been an hour and I'm like, crap, we need to wrap it up. Makini, what do you have coming up? What are your books about? Where can people get a hold of you? What kind of conversations do you have on your podcast?
Wow. So let's start with
in a nutshell. In a nutshell.
Everything within the brand is called a Walk In My Stilettos, because you're walking in someone else's shoes and you're learning about stories. So the podcast, it features inspiring women sharing their stories of resilience and how they've gotten through their adversities. And the 4 books are basically a Walk In My Stilettos series. The first one is a chapter book based on my story, my journey, with self-help tips on how you can get through yours. The second is an affirmations book, using affirmations to help you heal. The third is a gratitude journal to help you put into practice so that you can get your mind frame right and bring you up on the higher vibration. And the fourth is a couples gratitude journal. You can find me everywhere online under Makini Smith or Walk In My Stilettos. And what do I have coming up? I've got regular virtual podcast masterclasses for other women who want to start, launch, and market their podcast successfully.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we'll have all the links for you in the show notes and when we share this on social and everywhere. But I always tell people, just do a quick Google search and you will find people. It's amazing what happens when you put the energy and effort out there. Yeah, sometimes when you Google certain people, you find different things on the internet, but we'll see. Thank you. This has been an amazing conversation, Makini. I'm so grateful that the universe connected us.
Thank you so much.
It was Elizabeth.
Heather.
No, Elizabeth. Eleanor.
It was Eleanor. Yeah, I had her on my podcast and she recommended you, and I am so grateful. And honestly, I love when I call these divine connections, because we had no idea who we didn't know each other from anywhere. And someone who was a stranger to me, but that I had on the podcast, connected me to you, and I feel so deeply connected. So I am so grateful. Thank you, Heather.
Thank you. And it's just a reminder too, that when women show up in their power and their message, and we're such good connectors and collaborators, that if Eleanor didn't, take her leap and create what she created, she wouldn't have met you, and then we wouldn't have connected, and who knows where the future is going to take us. So just a reminder to everyone listening that there's magic happening when we let go of control.
Amen to that.
Well, that's it. And I wanted to thank you for listening today, because I truly believe you are exactly where you need to be. And now I have a favor to ask. In exchange for the value you've gained from this free podcast, I'd be forever grateful if you would leave us a review on iTunes. Share the show with at least one woman in your life who you feel would benefit, and or take a screenshot and share it on social media. And always feel free to tag me at Heather Chauvin. The world does not benefit from your guilt and fatigue. The world needs more women who are willing to unlearn everything they've been taught. Women who are courageous enough to feel good and not let guilt run the show. I believe you are that courageous woman. To see if my community and coaching is the right fit for you and your big vision, the relationships you desire, the money, time, energy that you know deep down you are capable of creating, then head on over to heatherchauvin.com/work with me. That's Heather Chauvin, CHAUVIN.com/work with me, and take the next step in the right direction. Taking a stand for how you feel means you are taking a stand for how your children show up as adults. And if you have a personal question or topic you'd like me to answer on the podcast, text me 313-710-5199. 313-710-5199. You are so worthy of feeling good. Now go do some scary shit.